March 24th, 2017. 5 years ago today, the Power Rangers movie from 2017 made its debut. And I can't believe that 5 years has gone by so quickly. It seems like only yesterday I saw this movie in the cinemas with a friend of mine. But in this video, I'm going to do my classic retrospective where I ramble on for however long I do, give my thoughts on the movies, give my thoughts on what I wish could happen, because we never got any sequels for this movie. Well, we kind of did, but I'll talk about it. But this movie is just going to be me rambling about the 2017 Power Rangers movie, so sit back, relax, enjoy, tab out, and listen to me talk. Okay, so when this movie was announced in 2014 and moving forward to its release date, I honestly did not care that much for this movie, to be honest. I don't know why, it just didn't struck me, but I think it's because when this movie was announced and leading up to its release date, there was this wave of nostalgia. Old stuff you grew up watching and listening to and reading was getting rebooted, whether it be video games, movies, and stuff like that. We're in this weird era of reboots, remakes, and a bunch of other stuff, and The Force Awakens kind of kicked that off as well, bringing back that nostalgia for old properties, and Power Rangers got caught in that nostalgia wave. Not only that, it was also its anniversary a couple of years before it, so Power Rangers was riding this anniversary nostalgic wave that got a lot of people talking, and seeing how there was a couple of those reboot movies and reboot properties coming out and failing, it did have me worried for this movie. But not only that, as I was listening to the Weekly Planet each Monday, usually you'd hear brand new writers and brand new directors coming and going for this project. I mean, we nearly had someone who worked on X-Men First Class on this, you nearly had Mac Landis, who was known for doing Chronicle, working on this. There was a lot of writers who came and went for this movie to write and direct, and most of them fell through until we got who we got in the end. And I'm not saying the people who worked on this film did a bad job. Not at all. I think they handled it the best way they could with whatever hand they were dealt with when making this movie. And how it turned out is how it turned out. Alright, let's talk about the cast. So, apart from Bill Hader and Elizabeth Banks and Bryan Cranston, I had no idea who these up-and-coming Rangers were when they were announced, and I think that's what they were kind of going for. They were kind of going for new and up-and-coming actors, kind of like when Mighty Morphin started back in the day. They had brand new faces to fill these roles, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing or that's a good thing, but like I said, I had no idea who these people were filling the roles of characters I grew up watching, and there were some big shoes to fill when I found out these people were being cast as some of my favorite characters. But I did have faith in the guy who played Jason, mostly because he's from my state of where I lived in Australia, and funny story, I almost had the chance to meet him doing a networking thing when I was studying back in the day, but I think I had other stuff going on, so hey, I could have met the dude once, so that opportunity came and went. But let's talk about the plot of the movie. The plot of the movie where I can talk about the characters as well. Alright, let's talk about the plot of this movie. So the plot of this movie, it's okay. I don't hate it. I don't shit on it like everyone else. But the plot of this movie at the end of the day is your very basic random people come together, they've got to work together, they get special powers, and they fight the bad guy, and then they win. This movie is just basically a 2-hour version of Day of the Dumpster in the modern day. And I feel like with the runtime they had with this movie, they could have fleshed out a bit more of the characters, because I feel like the characters that you walked away knowing nothing about were Zach and Trini. I feel like those characters could have had some more character development, and maybe they were going to get some more in the sequel if we ever got a sequel for this movie, which I gotta talk about how we will sequel baited at the end of this movie when I get to it. But I feel like we could have spent more time with Zach and Trini in this movie, because the campfire scene is one of those iconic scenes in this movie where they talk about their feelings and stuff like that, and talk about how they're doing and stuff like that. And then you've got that moment with Trini. That's another iconic moment during that campfire scene. A lot of people talk about that when it comes to this movie. That campfire scene is a fun scene in the movie, because it actually makes the characters, the teenagers with attitude, actually seem like teenagers with attitude, or teenagers in general. But there's other stuff I kind of wish they could have expanded on with this movie. Maybe we could have saw more of Zordon's flashback instead of seeing it at the start of the movie. Sort of get a deeper understanding on his history with Rita. But again, maybe they were saving that for the sequel. I don't know. But like I said, the characters that get the most development in this film, apart from like Zordon and Rita and stuff like that, is Jason and Kimberly, because they set up a romance between the characters, and Billy, because Billy's the unexpected favorite hero in this movie. And I gotta say, I loved Billy in this movie. What's the actor's name? I've got the Wikipedia open now. RJ Cyler. RJ's version of Billy is great in my opinion. And seeing how Billy in this movie had high-functioning autism, they didn't make it a big focus of his character. I think he only brings it up once or twice, and they do make a little quip about it, but apart from that, they didn't make it the main focus of his character. He's like, oh, I have autism, and Jason makes a joke about it, if I remember correctly. And Billy doesn't get the joke, it goes over his head, and Jason's like, never mind. So I think that's the only time they bring it up in the movie, if I remember correctly. They might bring it up once again, but apart from that, the whole Billy having autism in this movie, it didn't weigh down the character at all, but the Billy in this version of the movie also had the heroic moment where he sacrificed himself, he dies in the movie, and then Zordon brings him back to life. That was a really cool moment as well. And then it leads to them getting their powers, so I'm 5-6 minutes into this video and I should be talking about the suits, so I'll probably timestamp me talking about the suits, I don't know. So the suits in this movie. When I first saw the suits in this movie, I fucking hated them. They looked gross, they looked ugly, they looked like Iron Man ripoffs. I was like, what the fuck? These are not my Power Rangers suits I grew up with. These aren't looking like any version of Power Rangers suits I've seen. But once you see them in action, once you see them moving on the big screen in that high-def quality, they're not that bad. But when you see them standing still, and on that first shot we saw them, they were doo-doo suits looking to me. I did not like them. I'm going to be honest with you. I did not like them. Because they were different. They didn't look like Power Ranger suits. They looked like Iron Man suits with boob pockets for the girl characters. So, yeah, like I said, not a fan of the suits when I first saw them. But the Zord's horrendous as well. That is like a gross looking Zord we got on this movie. Some people defend the Zord, and if you defend the Zord, that's okay with you, but I don't get how that looks like the Megazord, or the Megazord I grew up with. The original Zords kind of look like modern day version of the T-Rex Zord and the Saber-Tooth Tiger Zord and stuff like that, but the actual Megazord coming together, nah fam, this ain't right. This ain't right indeed. And then you've got stuff like Goldar that doesn't even look like Goldar, or doesn't seem like Goldar, because it's like a amalgamation of gold coming together and stuff like that. So that's not my favorite version of Goldar in that movie as well. But we've talked about the movie enough. Let's talk about the ending and how we never got a sequel. So the movie sequel bait's hard as fuck with this movie, where they tease Tommy Oliver coming in at the end, and it's like, roll call, Tommy Oliver, and you see a green jacket hanging on the chair, and that sort of teases, ooh, where's Tommy coming? We don't know. Guess we'll find out in the sequel, and we never got the sequel because, in Saban's opinion, this movie underperformed. So, the whole reason why they say this movie underperformed is because it cost $105 million to make. It made $142 million to make. And I know what you're thinking, that's not too bad. No, usually when studios have a budget of $1 million that goes into marketing as well, they want to make double or triple that. Seeing how Saban barely scraped by making enough money to beat its budget, you could consider it a failure, and I can understand why they consider this movie a failure, because it did not do well commercial-wise with the audience. And I don't know how much this is true or where I've heard this from completely, but people say that this movie failing is the whole reason why Saban sold the rights to Hasbro. So imagine if this movie did well and Saban got that dopamine rush of this movie doing well. He wanted to make the 6 sequels he wanted to make. He wanted to make this into his own MCU version of Power Rangers. Like, Saban had that big rush and he kept the series. Like, things could have been very different, which would have been funny, but because this movie flopped and did really bad, like I said, they sold the rights to Hasbro. Accordingly, because this movie flopped and did really bad, they sold the rights to Power Rangers to Hasbro. But yeah, that's like the weird alternate universe we could live in right now. This movie doing well and getting the 7 sequels that Saban wanted, or this movie doing bad and we are where we are now, where Hasbro owns the series. It's a funny world. It's a funny world we live in. But I feel like I've ranted on enough about this movie. Like I said, this movie, I don't hate. I don't hate on this movie. It's a fun movie to watch in the background when I'm editing and stuff like that. I do like this movie, but I don't love it like most of the fandom do. I understand what it was trying to do and I respect what it was trying to do, but I'm not in love with this movie like everyone else. I think it's a pretty good movie. I think it did what it could do, or it tried doing what it could do, but overall, it's not like a movie that I'm in love with. Like, it tried doing what it needed to do, and it did what it needed to do, but it is what it is. So, with that said, I'm going to bring this video to a close. What are your memories with the Power Rangers 2017 movie? Tell me in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts and opinions. With that said, I'm bringing this video to a close. If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and don't forget to turn on notifications. Special thanks to all the members such as Swagger4 and Andrew McCoy, and the Power Bunny was a $30 member. If you want to get your name shouted out like these guys over here, hit the join button and become a YouTube member for special perks and stuff like that on the channel. With that said, I'm out of here. Bye.